I'm Mark Culling, Mr. Saltwater Tank, coming to you on behalf of saltwateraquarium.com. As I said in the first video in this series, moving and upgrading your saltwater tank is something that you want to plan for. Use all the time that you have to make sure that you're ready to go. And in this video, which I'm hoping you're not watching the day before you go to move your tank, I'm going to walk you through your pre-move checklist. Things that you want to do ahead of time to make sure that you're ready to go and help that move go smoothly. And the first thing, look at your tank and write down all the fish and coral in it. Look at the fish and say, hey, we've got 3, 4 clownfish in here, got a PJ cardinal. Write them all down. Make a list. You're gonna forget it. Write the thing down. Then the next day, come back and count all the fish again. It may be that a certain fish was hiding that day and you overlooked them. You're gonna wanna reference this list when you go to tear down your tank. And oh, by the way, you wanna set up this list ahead of time. When you go to tear down your tank, that's not the time to go, how many fish do I have in here? Because certain fish are gonna hide, they could get stuck on the rocks, they could get overlooked. So write down all the fish and coral that you have in your tank, check it twice, and then you have the option to start cutting. Cutting? Yeah, cutting. Cutting fish and coral from your list. When you break down your tank to move it, that's the best time to take fish and coral that you don't want and get them out of your tank. When you drain the ocean, that's emptying your tank, the fish have nowhere to go. So they're very easy to catch. So those damn damselfish that you put in there to cycle your tank with, now's a great time to get them out of there because you can't catch them otherwise. When you break down your system to move it or upgrade it, this is a great time to get rid of coral that you don't want anymore. Maybe it's a coral that's overgrown everything and become a pest, like this GSP. Or there's a coral that you like that wasn't easy to reach and it wasn't easy to frag. As you take apart your system, now you can reach the coral and cut frags. Now speaking of frags, way ahead of time is the very best time that you want to take frags from your system. As I said in the last video, I guarantee you that your tank is going to get angry with you during the move. Parameters are going to change, corals are going to bleach out, some corals may die. So if you have prize corals that you really like or are hard to find, take frags of them. Take frags, put them in another system, put them in your buddy's system. Maybe you can talk to your local fish store or a reputable online vendor about holding some of those frags to give you some insurance. Look, I'd love to be wrong on this one. If you move your tank and all your expensive SPS don't blink an eye, awesome, fantastic for you. But I've seen it time and time again where people have great SPS tanks, even LPS tanks. They move them, the corals gets upset, they die, and now they've lost their prize colony of fill in the blank. So use this time to get rid of those corals that you don't want. At the same time, use this time to take frags, give yourself some insurance just in case things don't go well. When it comes to moving or upgrading your saltwater tank, you definitely don't want to do it alone. Find some help, whether it's your buddy, reef buddy, and here's a hint, reef buddies will work for frags or used equipment. Line these people up far in advance. Hey Jay, you want to help me move a tank?
No.
They may not be willing, and even if they are, chances are that about half of your help isn't going to show up. So you may consider hiring help, actually paying money for people, I like to use movers, to help you move your tank. Now, they don't have to frag corals, but I do recommend you at least hire movers to do the heavy lifting, moving the tank, moving the stand. Sure, your buddies are your friends, but that doesn't always mean they're reliable. Have plenty of RODI water and salt water on hand. The last thing you want to do is run out, because RODI water takes some time to make, especially during cold weather months when your RODI per unit production really slows down. If you have extra salt water on hand, you can use that for water changes. Extra RODI water, look, you can use it for top off. So grab yourself some barrels, some 5-gallon buckets, brew trash cans, whatever. Have plenty of water on hand. Worst case scenario, you don't need it and you use it down the line. Prepare your holding tanks. Whether it's holding tanks for fish or holding tanks for corals, get those things set up well beforehand. Now, if it's just going to be a fish tank, you can set it up a couple days beforehand, put some live rock from your tank or add some bacteria in a bottle, and it's good to go. If you're going to be taking out corals and holding them in your place, you absolutely want to get that tank going a month, even 2 months in advance to get that tank seasoned. Coral tanks are much more sensitive than fish tanks, so use that time to get that coral tank up and going. And this is also a great time to quarantine or treat any fish that you have in your tank. If you know you have ache in your tank while you've got all the fish out of there and they're in a holding tank, now's the time to treat them. This is the best opportunity to do it. Again, we're going to use that time to our advantage.
If you've been around saltwater aquariums for any amount of time, you're going to have plenty of buckets, usually empty salt buckets. These work great for transporting fish and corals. Here's the catch. You need the lid. If you just have a bucket without a lid, water is going to slosh down in there and make a mess, even if you drive like your grandmother. So grab a bucket and make sure that the lid fits and fits tightly. And I recommend you have different sizes of buckets. The 5-gallon buckets are useful. Even the old 1-gallon bucket is super useful. You've got some small frags, you don't want to put them in the 5-gallon bucket with bigger colonies. Things could touch one another, sting, or get crushed. Again, a lot about moving a saltwater tank is giving yourself options. So have some 1-gallon buckets, have some 5-gallon buckets. If you can find taller buckets, that's great too. Have plenty of them. If you have tons and you don't have to use them, that's much better than not having enough and having to scramble when you go to break down your tank. Okay, so we talked about buckets. What about another potentially obvious thing to use to transport your fishing corals? I'm talking about coolers. Here's the thing about coolers. They work pretty well, but they're not great for being mobile, especially these styros. If you need to put some fish or coral in a container, one of these styros, because you've run out of buckets, go for it. But don't plan on moving these things very far, if at all. They can crack, and when they crack, they leak. It's a major pain in the tail. So use these in a clutch. If you need some around for your move, look, go for it. Again, if you don't use them, that's great, but if you need them in a pinch, you're gonna have them. Okay, so there's the old school styro. What about the newest, latest, greatest coolers? The Yeti. These things keep things cold and warm for forever, right? Here's the thing. The smaller ones, I could use these as transport ones, but if you got a Yeti 110, one of those big orcas, they're gonna get really heavy when you fill them up with water and then rock or corals, etc. So if you're a smaller one, look, go for it. Or if you have a big one and you know you're not gonna move it, absolutely use it. But don't plan on getting a big cooler, filling it up, and then try to move it. Besides buckets and coolers, here's some other things you wanna have on hand during your move and your upgrade. Fish nets. It's easier to catch a fish with 2 nets. Air bubblers and air stones and airline tubing. Low flow power heads. If you're keeping coral in a bucket or a small trough or a small tank, it's going to need some flow. But you don't want to put your MP40 or MP60 on the bucket and blast everything to bits. Old school thermometers. Look, you're not going to plug in your tank controller just to get a temperature read. Have these thermometers around and use them to your advantage. Tap water dechlorinator. If you happen to find yourself short on RODI water and you can't wait to make more, you can dechlorinate some tap. Your fish aren't going to notice. When it comes to moving and upgrading saltwater tank, one thing I do every single time is I replace my sand bed. Even if you vacuum your sand bed, you'd be surprised how much detritus is in your sand bed. When you go to move your tank, if you disturb all that detritus, it's going to get put up in your water column and then can lead to nitrates and other nutrient issues in your new tank. The last thing you want to do is go through all this effort of moving your tank or upgrading your tank, and then you have a nutrient problem for who knows how long because you tried to reuse the sand. So plan on replacing the sand. If you want to save a little bit to help seed your new tank, I'm cool with that. But don't try to use it all, take it all out, wash it. It's just not worth it. Sand isn't that expensive, and if replacing your sand is going to break your budget on your move or your upgrade, not something you should be moving or thinking of upgrading. Again, replace that sand, you'll thank me in the long term. Now, there's your pre-move checklist. Again, I hope you're watching this a day or two before you move because you want to do this way ahead of time. I'll say it again, moving a saltwater tank is about giving yourself options. The more time you have, use it. Till next time, I'm Mark Culling, Mr. Saltwater Tank, coming to you on behalf of saltwateraquarium.com. Happy planning, fun thinking about that upgrade and that move. I'll catch you in the next episode.